Welcome to Well Good Movies, the podcast which asks which movies are well worth watching and remembering for all time. Every episode we discuss a different piece of film history to decide if it should make its way into our movie vault. Filled with questions, trivia and crazy challenges, it's the perfect way to deep dive into a myriad of movies. But don't just take my word for it. Here's a glimpse of what to expect in today's episode. 10 minutes into the film, I was like watching it like, Craig is gonna hate this. I was watching it just knowing everything I was seeing. I was like, there was like a sequence with like, I was like, do I warn him?
Yeah, ironically, you didn't warn me until I pointed out that I was half an hour in and I was like, what the hell is going on? All the stuff with the pus got me. Like when she's like pussing and it's in the custard, I was like,
yes! Oh, it's so gross!
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Are you not entertained? Wait! I'll be back. Here's Johnny. Oh, hi, Mark.
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
I'm Batman. It's not the car. It's a silly
And beyond. You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
Well, good movies.
Hello and welcome to Well Good Movies, the podcast that asks which movies are well worth watching and deserve to be remembered for all time. And who boy have we got a fun episode for you today. I'm your host, David Oscar, and I'm joined by someone who's likely so done with zombie apocalypses, he might just start one of his own. It's Craig McDonald. Hello, Craig.
yeah.
How are you?
Well, I think you've already described it. I think I'm in a pretty dour mood, to be honest. You work so hard. You work so hard to get out of this everybody dies scenario film to the point that we're talking about Muppets, right? Muppets, we're out of that realm and then we're plunged right back in.
It was quite the connection to the film we're discussing this week. So
It was a hell of a connection. It's just my psyche can only take so much.
Credit to Charlie for that one. Thank you. But yeah, I count it as kind of 4 zombie movies in like the frame of like the last 9 months, maybe.
Not even around October, for God's sake.
But even if we're looking at like this year, I'm counting like maybe 6 or 7. If you just want to include like things like 7 in which there was like a creepy dead body and things like that. So it's like you said, there's the spooky people dying vibes. But yeah, I was just surprised that before Christmas we had quite a few zombie films, which included somebody who is joining us for the discussion today as well.
Yeah, and they were, as I would consider, thematically appropriate. I'd also like to point out, technically, as one of our guests here today, it's technically their fault that the year started with the sort of bleak aspect that they did by opting to roll that wheel a third time.
All right, well, let's find out what we're discussing and potentially what Craig might have to say with what we are watching. So Craig, please recap us on what happened last time and how we came to discuss this film.
Well, in last episode, after discussing the Muppets 2011 revival film, we played a game that was aptly called Man or a Muppet, in which we had Charlie versus Mary. In the end, Charlie was our victor, and the film that they decided to bring us into on the theme of puppetry and practical effects above all that was, depending on where you were living in the world, Dead or Alive, or as I believe it was known to us, Braindead.
On this picturesque block, in this manicured home, something evil, something terrifying, something horrifying is haunting Lionel. His mother,
I thought I told you to spray this house. The place is infested with vermin.
although she was a little strict,
Look at this dust. It's an inch thick.
he never wished her any harm
You look after me like...
until
Your mother's dead, Lionel.
now, whatever Mom's got
Who's your mother?
has caught on with the neighbors.
She's been bitten. You know what that means?
You can pray.
I kick ass for the law.
You can plead. You can beg for mercy.
Help! Someone! Please!
But nothing you can do will stop it.
Thousands of them!
Because how do you kill something that's already dead?
Yep, so today we'll be talking all about Braindead or Dead Alive from 1992 and asking the question of whether it deserves the honor of a place in our movie vault, our vault that encapsulates memorable movies for all time. So for those who don't know, the story of Braindead is a young man's mother is bitten by some rat monkey. She gets sick and dies, at which time she comes back to life, killing and eating dogs, nurses, friends, and neighbors. The film is directed by Peter Jackson. This is one of his earlier films. He's known for critically acclaimed films like Heavenly Creatures, before he then went to become a big-name director with Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films. He later then also, well, in between that sort of time, he did his take on King Kong. So this film is written by Jackson along with Stephen Sinclair and Fran Walsh, also known for scripting many of Jackson's films. The music is by Peter Descent, cinematography by Murray Milne, edited by Jamie Selkirk. It stars Timothy Balm as Lionel Cosgrove, our main character, Elizabeth Moody as Vera Cosgrove, the aforementioned mum, Diana Penalva as Paquita Maria Sanchez, Ian Watkin as Uncle Les, Brenda Kendall as Nurse McTavish, Stuart Devaney as Father Magruder, and then just a whole host of Kiwi actors playing the likes of zombies and civilians and all kinds of crazy things. So, yeah, over to those who are joining us this week. So, first of all, he's joined us earlier in the year talking about other sort of creepy, crazy dystopian movies. It's Johann Chipol. Hello, Johann.
Hi there. This is, oh God, it always feels like whenever there's a weird movie coming on, you have to knock on my door and you literally drag me kicking and screaming onto this episode. Because when you told me, it's, oh, you're going to be, oh, this is such an early time. Why are you getting me on so early since the last one? And when you told me what the movie was, it's like, okay, now I know why. I know exactly why you got me on.
Yep, exactly. It's one of those in which you just see what it's all about. It's like, this is up Johann Street. I think I pretty much said to you, like, have you seen this film? Have you ever discussed it?
Yeah, and I think I saw this first time when I was like a teen, and I just fell in love with it ever since. So yeah, you got me you got me in here. So
see, for a moment I thought you were talking like a traumatized man, and I thought, okay, I've got a kindred spirit here, but apparently not. Okay.
Well, the first time I watched it, I was traumatized. I think I got numb to the pain eventually, but you'll see what I mean when we review it properly.
Right, over to who else is joining us? As we've mentioned, somebody else who has joined us in the past for weird, creepy movies and stuff from the past. It is our good friend, Christopher Maxwell. Hello, Chris.
Hello, David. How are you?
I'm good. Are you not speaking to Craig?
No, I was just going to see how you were, and I was going to move on to Craig.
Oh, okay, right.
Let's be fair, I vented a lot on this episode already.
Yeah. I did sort of get a vibe off Craig, so I thought if I asked him how he was doing, it might be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
True. Or it might have just been that you were like, I love this film, and already you're just like, I'm just ignoring Craig. I would just love that for an episode if somebody just ignored one of the hosts.
We've had that, David. Do you want me to go through our repertoire and literally show you where guests have ignored me?
I am reading the room as we speak.
I like those bastards. I don't give a damn.
Chris doesn't do that, though.
No, Chris doesn't. No, both of you are fine. Both of you are chill.
So can I assume that you're all right then, Craig?
Could be worse.
Fair enough.
As we mentioned, Peter Jackson is the director of this film, very much in the early days of his career. People often talk about Lord of the Rings, or you see the behind the scenes, and even Jackson himself has said, like, really, you're choosing me, the guy who did, Meet the Feebles and all these type of films to make this big, like, epic trilogy. And it is even more bizarre when you look back at it now. But I guess there's, a bit of a conversation there to have about filmmakers from that part of the world in some ways, like Taika Waititi also, somebody from New Zealand in terms of the type of output they have potentially, but also just, he is a big filmmaker, which we haven't really discussed before, but I guess here's a good chance to talk about those sort of early days of his career, because he did make quite a few of these kind of like zany comedy horror movies. Johann, as you mentioned, this is something that you've sort of covered in the past in terms of those kind of crazy zombie horror movies, but also you said that, you are a fan. Talk us through a bit about maybe what is the thinking at this time in Jackson's filmography. What are people reacting to? What type of filmmaker do they think he is?
Well, basically around this time, people know him for about 3 movies. So Bad Taste, which was his first feature film, which is basically about a population of a small town that disappears, is replaced by aliens, and so the humans are used as flesh because they open an intergalactic food chain, right? You got Meet the Feebles, which is like, do you know you were talking about the Muppets? I'm surprised I'm glad they didn't give you Meet the Feebles. I'll tell you that for a fact. Because
they did specifically say, I won't go that far. They did consider it, but they said it might be a bit too much.
And that's the thing, is even to me, who loves this kind of stuff, even I'm thinking, oh boy, yeah. It's and the whole, and then it goes obviously onto Braindead, and then is a weird thing after that, because then those are his main 3 films that are like all of a very similar tone, where they are quite literally batshit insane, and it's almost bizarre how his tone shifts from here to other movies afterwards, because movies after that, he did Heavenly Creatures right after that one, and that one's nothing like the other 3. And then obviously got The Frighteners, which is more like a Hollywood style version of a Peter Jackson movie around then, because it had like Michael J. Fox, and it's all about ghosts and creepy stuff to a degree, but it's more family fun. Woo, before he literally makes a giant leap and does Lord of the Rings, which is so weird. It's like Wes Craven decides to do a romantic comedy. It's that kind of level of leap. The tone here is, I think this is a filmmaker who was very hungry and really, really wanted to stand out. And you can tell by literally putting everything into it, whether it is design. And at the time, I think he purposely wanted to shock. He wanted to say like, oh, if I'm shocking and weird and over the top and really play fun with my comedy, which it shows that Peter Jackson's comedy is very renownedly, he's quite a dark comedian that way. Loves dark comedy, loves death, loves just like the weird scenarios. And lots of blood, which we will talk about at some point. It's basically him trying to establish himself in that way as just this standout director that does, hey, that's the guy who does all the weird stuff. That's the one with the weird puppety things. Oh, this is the one with the thing. That's the one with that. Which is perfect for like a cult filmmaker in that way. It wasn't until he did something like Heavenly Creatures, which is basically a drama, really. It's a full-blown drama film where Hollywood starts coming in and going, oh, so you're not the blood guy. Okay, maybe we can give you something else. And that's a trajectory he's kind of gone ever since, going bigger, more Hollywood, more epic, and more over the top in that kind of sense, where it's now you can't think of Peter Jackson and think of like, oh, that's the guy that does where he kills an entire room of people with a lawnmower. No, that's not the guy. You are the Lord of the Rings guy now. It's a huge leap. I personally love his early work because it is someone who's just showing a lot of his creativity and how weird he can be. He's a big weirdo. He's a big film weirdo, and I loved him for that. And now he's still a weirdo, but now he's doing Hobbits. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right in the sense of like I never personally haven't sort of delved into his early career before. I've sort of seen a lot of the behind the scenes stuff and then been told that and seen clips of it and things like that. And I'm like, oh wow, I need to see what this is all about. Hearing about things like Bad Taste and reading about them, etc. And I think from watching this and from what I saw before, it definitely gave me the impression of like, this is somebody in the early days of his career, kind of like indie filmmaker, if you want, kind of doing that kind of like more experimental sort of like film school type ideas, being big and bold, crazy. And that's why I also mentioned Taika Waititi, because it does remind me of him in some ways, in that I think now probably Hollywood is maybe more accepting of kooky ideas. Maybe you could also say similar to the Daniels now, like how would somebody really say, oh, the people who made that, farting corpse movie have done that like crazy multiverse film with, they're using all sorts of like crazy rude stuff in that. So they seem to have become more accepting of it, but it's almost as if he's cut from that same sort of cloth of like the type of humor. But Taika Waititi maybe could have been caught in the trap of, oh, you just do silly vampire, like sort of mockumentary style films. But then he does Jojo Rabbit, which is still operating on a same silly, let's make fun of Hitler vibe, but it has got an emotional core to it, which I guess similar to the trajectory you were saying with Jackson a bit.
I would have a slightly different take on my comparison between them. In the two examples that you gave, they are weird ideas, but I think in those situations, those are film examples where they at least took one idea and sort of built everything they could necessarily around it, whereas the different vibes that Peter Jackson chooses for this film in particular is very much, it comes across as a guy who's afraid he's never going to get a film again, so just like throws every conceivable idea he has for this sort of zombie film all together. And there are times in which I'm just like, why has the tone of this film drastically changed? What's going on?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's like a direct comparison, but that's why I think it's interesting about the style of humor and things like that, just the comedy that you seem to get from maybe even that part of the world, like that affinity for like horror and gore, and like when you look at things like Hunt for the Wilder People, which with TD's done it before as well, it's just not that that's anything similar to what we're talking about with Jackson, but again, it's that kind of affinity for humor and sort of oddball characters and sort of like more rogue stories. But it very much definitely speaks to that time of the 80s 90s kind of like horror zombie stuff. Chris, do you think that it's kind of indicative of things like Dawn of the Dead and Army of Darkness? Those are some of the ones that sort of came to my mind when I'm thinking of people covered in blood and like crazy zombie antics.
Well, that was it. Like you were saying, you were comparing him to like Taika Waititi. I think the biggest comparison I can make with Peter Jackson is Sam Raimi. This was a director who wears his influences and his inspirations on his sleeve, but is also at the early stages of his career was willing to throw anything at the wall and take these massive risks and do wild and crazy things. And not all of it sticks, but I personally think that it's a great thing to see a filmmaker do stuff like that. And I think in the case of this one in particular, he'd done Bad Tastes and Meet the Feebles, and those were considerably lesser budgets than this. And I think Craig said, it felt like he had the fear that he was never going to make another film again. I think he was more just sort of like, oh my God, this is nuts. Look how much money I've got. I'm going to go mad with this. And I think he wanted to sort of leave a mark, because it's almost like films come in threes, don't they? And I think you'll have like three. If it's not a direct trilogy, it's three styles of film you'll have. And his first three movies are all gross out, mad slapstick comedy. And then I think when he realized, okay, it's time to move on, that's when he started doing things like Heavenly Creatures and The Frighteners. And I think directors like that are some of the most interesting ones to look out for. Filmmakers like Tobe Hooper, there's an example when he made Texas Chainsaw Massacre, wanting to do something nuts and filled with adrenaline. It's a bit more, it's not, he calls it a comedy, but it's very much on the darker spectrum of comedy. But you can tell when you've got the free reign, the creativity that they would do. And I'm looking forward to talking about some of the cinematography in this, because I think Peter Jackson, more than anything, nails cinematography, even in this film. With his limitations, I think he does some amazing work in this.
Yeah, probably some other similar ones you can mention is maybe like James Gunn, Robert Rodriguez to an extent. I think it's like you said, is that element of I find it interesting that a lot of comedy people, especially we were just talking about Lord and Miller with the Jump Street films, because, well, even the Russo brothers as well, they came from like Community and stuff like that. There seems to be an affinity for that love of cinema and spectacle and, cinematic filmmaking from people who originate in comedy. I think that there is an idea of like, especially when you look at people who come from film schools, etc., it's an easy territory to go into, something to get your ideas out there. But as you sort of mature, you're like, well, now I want to do this, now I want to do that. And I think Sam Raimi is a great example, because you can see how he brings that to Spider-Man. You know, he brings that love of like Superman and the sort of like kind of like big spectacle movies. But he's also like, I want to throw in a Doc Ock nightmare crazy horror sequence in the middle of Spider-Man 2. So I think that, you know, there's still that element to the filmmaker there. And I think, you know, I am seeing a bit more now with Peter Jackson why, yes, some people might say, really, you know, as we said, you chose this guy. It is a massive jump, but also, you know, there's, you know, the practical effects, you know, a lot of the like types of creatures and stuff you're dealing with. You do start to see some kind of soft connections of being like, oh, okay, I can understand maybe why that weird moment in Lord of the Rings was there now because of him.
Well, to add to this just in general, you know, you have to understand that, like I mentioned at the beginning, Peter Jackson's a big weirdo. He's a big nerdy film weirdo. And so, you know, of course, at the end of the day, when you really think about it, of course he's going to do a big fantasy movie, because he wouldn't be surprised if he was that kind of level of film nerd and would do that kind of thing. And you mentioned as well, like for example, Sam Raimi. If you want to go into not an insulting way, but all film buffs and all comedians to a degree are all just weirdos and nerds. And so, of course, we're going to make references whenever we can. Of course, we're going to say, "Oh, I loved Evil Dead. Let's just make this entire movie my big love letter to Evil Dead. Why not?" Or this is the bit, or you're sitting there going, "Oh, this is what Peter Jackson was. It's basically New Zealand humor, but if someone just watched way too much like VHS nasty movies as a teenager and said, I want to make that." Well, you know, I mean, Taika Waititi's something else. He's the one who's gone like, well, actually, I kind of just want to make, I just want to make something weird and pleasant. It's almost like he's the guy who's probably watched way too many like low budget indie movies that were just a little bit about the heart in some way. Well, Peter Jackson's like, yes, blood, gore, boobs, yes! And so he goes full hog with that in a way that is loving and nerdy, not exploitative. Because I don't see Braindead as being something that's clearly exploitative in any shape or form. It's almost it's more done as almost both a love letter and almost poking the hell out of it. It's wonderful in that sense.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. It's just like you can tell that this is as much of a parody of the genre as it is a tribute to the genre. In fact, I think that's what the best type of parodies are the type of films where it's like, yeah, we're all in on the joke here, but, you know, we still enjoy it. We still like this stuff. Yeah, zombies are overdone, but we still enjoy it. And, you know, it's why a film like this I would rate as a great parody compared to anything like a date movie, which is literally just, let's just do the exact same film, but put some more dick and fart jokes in it. You know, which is funny because this film has a lot of that in it too, but there's so much more to it than just that. Yeah, this film's got loads of layers to it.
Chris, do you think that the kind of influence from his early films, do you think it tracks, that it kind of carried on into his later career? Do you think he's still influential, like things like Braindead now? Or
I think he has changed, and I think
you've changed, man.
Yeah,
you changed.
You changed, Jackson. You used to be all about the gore, and now you're all about the Hollywood. But I think it's a difficult one with when you make the transition from sort of independent film to Hollywood, because clearly there's a lot of do's and don'ts when it comes to cinema in Hollywood and what you can and can't do. And he definitely became more focused on the grandeur of cinema. But if there's one thing that has tracked, it's that Peter Jackson always goes big. And you can tell that with these first films as well. Because by the time he gets to Braindead, he's like, this is going to be bigger than ever. And you can see it with Heavenly Creatures and how he was taking all these big risks with what goes on in that film in terms of the fantasy world that happens in that, to the Frighteners with the ghosts and the dream sequences. And then with Lord of the Rings, it's the even bigger fantasy. And I think what you can see with Peter Jackson is that when you give him something different to play with that's outside of his own crazy, nerdy brain, he is willing to still apply his big, dramatic, awesome cinema mind to it. But it's just how much of the source material he's getting can be really good. And I think in case of The Hobbit as well, they basically just said, let's just do Lord of the Rings again, but do it for The Hobbit. That's basically why those films didn't work. They just tried to repeat what he did in the early 2000s. And of course it didn't work, because you're not going to repeat that.
Well, the biggest travesty of it, again, especially watching Braindead, is the fact that he seemed such a practical puppetry guy to then be, as most people say, how could you replace the orcs with CG orcs and that kind of stuff? I think that's the biggest, like, sticking point for most people. And like now watching this film and looking through the early stuff, it's like, yeah, why has that guy? I can understand like the sequences and everything like that, but to replace like even characters and costumes and stuff like that, I think that is surprising. And I think it has robbed him of that kind of like creative flair in some ways. But yeah, I think definitely there's been a lot of changes. He's a big director for several reasons, as you said. He always goes big, which I think is a good way of putting it.
I mean, how much bigger can you get than Zombie Baby? I mean, this the thing is, I didn't know about Braindead for a while until the internet came along, obviously, and that whole sequence was just a meme back in the early days. Seeing the baby do weird stuff and seeing the scene of this person just beating up a zombie baby in the park. And the puppetry in that is so dumb and weird and quirky, and the design of the puppet is just grotesque, and I love it. It's just so weird and wonderful to see the baby flying around, just the whole thing, the chaos from it is wonderful. And yeah, I feel like that's peak. Like, you can't top that, personally. I think...
Let's start off then talking about this movie. I'll start off maybe just from the most like kind of neutral position in this, in that I think, as kind of maybe already evident, or just the way I've sort of like talked so far, I can definitely take the viewpoint of like, I can respect this as a kind of like it's a choice, as we said before recording.
It is a choice.
Maybe not my vibe, maybe not my style of comedy. I'm not that much of a horror or blood or gore person, so it didn't personally make me like, oh my god, yeah, woo, But I kind of had to just like sit back and kind of go, this isn't for me, but I can't say like it's badly done. I just think that it's just so bold and crazy. I'm like, I've got to give my hats off just for the pure lunacy of it, and just a lot of the practical elements, like some of the models and stuff here. I love seeing like the little like model trams and things like that. The performances are very elaborate, very crazy, I think. And I think the fact that they're just all like a cast of like Kiwi characters adds to the charm of it in some ways. I think that, the way that they act, they go in all in, especially like somebody who does that like uncle character or the mother. There are some weird choices in this. I will say that I fucking hate that baby. I do not like it. Just pissed me off. I was like, this baby is annoying. I was like, well, I can see what you mean. I understand why it's a meme, but I was like, I could tolerate everything else in this, but this baby is annoying me. I was just like, it's just the laugh. Just the like, I was like, oh, I want to like kill this thing, please.
Which is, I hope it's kind of the point. You're not going to look at that baby and go, you know what, you're fucking adorable. No, you are a tyrant.
It's kind of like a Chucky vibe for me. I think you guys were saying about like, did people steal this? I was more like, I think they looked at like Chucky or whatever and just said, let's just make him like even more of like an annoying arsehole.
Worse.
Yeah, I think it works really well because he's clearly got a very like childish, whiny baby voice. But then you look at it, and you're like, that thing is disgusting. What the hell is that thing? And it creates a really nice juxtaposition with that whole baby character, which is just the strangest thing. And the whole concept behind it is just good lord.
But I'll say, maybe that took me out of the experience more, but 10 minutes into the film I was like watching it like, Craig is gonna hate this. I was watching it just knowing everything I was seeing. I was like, there was then a sequence with like, I was like, do I warn him? And then there was like a teeth sequence pulling out, and I was like, this is not up Craig's street.
Yeah, ironically, you didn't warn me until I pointed out that I was half an hour in and I was like, what the hell is going on? You warned me about the teeth sequence. I was all right with the teeth sequence, surprisingly. There were things that got me worse than the teeth sequence.
There's a lot worse than the teeth sequence, personally.
Ironically, all the stuff with the pus got me. Like, when she's, like, pussing and it's in the custard, I was like...
Yes!
That's why I was like,
gross!
that's potentially already happened at that stage of what you had said. You're half an hour in.
So every time I have watched this film, I can never watch the screen at that point. It's so weird. That film is filled with viscera and literal human digestive systems attacking people. But I cannot. I just couldn't do it because I love custard, man. And there was a time where I couldn't have custard because I would get like flashbacks and I'd be like, and no.
Oh, the pus is just awful.
Because, like, obviously I have to respect how practically well the film is made. It's able to do things like that. It's able to have things like a woman's head effectively being cut off, but still able to eat. But then when she's eating... that's the... Can I just get this scene out of my head now? Because this is where... My main criticism of this film, and I think the thing that sort of affects me, and the reason I say that this feels like he throws every conceivable idea against the wall... It's because I do not understand how the rationale of this world necessarily works. And I think there are lots of comedy horror films I'm able to get on board with because they essentially have like one set of rules and they respect the set of rules and they just make jokes necessarily going from there, right? I can respect that. But in this world, so this weird rat monkey thing causes people to... Like, I like the rat monkey thing. I thought the scene where they, essentially capture him and they're running away from the natives and then he gets clawed and they essentially have to dismember the guy. I thought, okay, that's quite effective.
Yeah. Interestingly, that's where I watched that. I was like, okay, I think Craig might be all right with this. Yeah. And then there was a later bit. I was like, oh, this is where I started to doubt what I was thinking.
Yeah. It's then to the point of like, when it's at the zoo, this thing is dangerous. Why on earth have you given it open bars where it can just freely, like, rip the arms off of monkeys and, like, just fit its head through the bars to bite the visitors? Why does no one then take the woman who's been clearly bitten by this weird demonic rat thing? Why does no one take her to the hospital? Like, why
get a tetanus shot or something?
Yeah, like, tetanus is a... But anyway, that's all, like... And fine, whatever. And then it's like and it's obviously like she's zombifying. She needs to eat meat, so she's stealing steaks. She's swallowing dogs whole, which leads to my least favorite line of the film, which was "Your mother ate my dog." Well,
it's a great line.
No, it's like, well, not all of it. I'm like, what a callous bastard. But like,
so
fine.
good.
So we got to the point where these zombies are carnivorous. I get that. Yeah. And then, because like more of them have developed because of the graveyard scene, I will say that anti-grave digging mug gang I kind of do like. There's just not enough of them in the film. But it's then when he's got them all around the dinner table trying to feed them, and at no point are any of them trying... I'm like, what are the rules of this world? Why are you no longer trying to eat this guy? Why is it that now zombies zombies f***ing? Are you kidding me?
Also, that bit's great because it's the bit where the uncle goes in and looks and says, "Oh, so you found your dad's secret stag movies, haven't they?"
Yeah.
Oh,
is that the one with the donkey and the chambermaid?
Yes! That was... I mean, I will say there are two things in this film that did make me laugh. One was the fact that they had the Archers soundtrack in, or just an episode of the Archers.
Yes.
And then the other one, and I'll tell you what my actual favorite line of the film is. It's from the graveyard scene. It's with the father where he says,
"Yes,
I kick ass for the Lord."
I've got that written down. Yeah,
it is.
Love that scene.
And just the only fighting he does is just a series of roundhouse kicks.
He's so good at it, though.
It literally was like a Tekken game. It was like the sound effects even were like... It was quite impressive. And that is to the element of like, let's throw everything in here. And just... Because at that point I was like, oh, wow, okay, we're going there. It was quite crazy.
It just doesn't come off as cohesive unless you're a fan of the genre.
Well, that's the thing, is even if you're a fan of the genre of movies, this movie does throw left turns. I mean, you don't expect halfway through the movie to have a kung fu sequence, for example, right? You don't expect
from the vicar.
Especially from the vicar, right? At the beginning of the beginning of the film is very obviously tribute to like the old monster movies of the 1930s and 40s. Then you've got the two characters as clearly the relationship between our character and the mother is very much Psycho related. It's very much like
I'll get
Psycho.
to that later, but carry on.
You know, and then it's like a lovely little cutesy little thing, and there's a bit of a slapball comedy, and then the monkey comes in. And it's a different genre now, and then it's this thing, and it's this thing. If you do not overthink the fact that every 10 minutes you're going to get something really random, don't think it. Just embrace the fact that this entire thing is nonsense. And my God, you're just on a roller coaster of emotions, and you laugh every 5 seconds knowing that what the fudge is happening here.
What you're saying is,
applause.
I needed to be warned.
I think you might have been said like, boy...
There was the previous episode as well. I think Charlie did say some things as to it, but again...
I don't think it was ever established that the reason I should be weary of this film is because it's just gonna quantum leap genre every now and then.
Not just quantum leap, but go through multiple multiverses on the way back.
Yeah, I think the logic and stuff, it is strange. Like you said, I think I was thinking the same thing. Why is the mother not getting seen to more seriously? I think maybe they could have been a bit more clear about the time frame of this film, because like you said, when that graveyard thing was happening, I was like, why are there a bunch of like mod, people like in this film? And then by the end I was like seeing all the cars more and more. I was like, oh, this is like the 50s or something like that.
I also didn't know that.
So I think that like that becomes more clear then as the film goes on, because even though it's got the old-timey radios and TVs, you don't know if that's just a stylistic choice of kind of being like, oh, it's all cutesy and like oldie worldy,
or just the fact it's like the mother's house. So
yeah, exactly. So I think that, that makes it, not so much confusing, because I think that, it's a very simple story and look to it from the get-go anyway. But it is bizarre where, again, it's hard because it is meant to be like a bizarre comedy as well. But when she's like, you ate my dog, and then literally like 2 seconds later, she's fine. She doesn't care. She's like, they're like, yeah, I'll get you stuff for the hospital. I'll do this. I'll do that. I'm like, what happened to the anger?
The thing that bothers me more about her is the fact that she literally lets a fortune teller dictate her love life. So the moment
again, the fortune teller is her mother. So it's like, mummy.
If my mother said this is the person you're going to date, I'm not going to be like, all right, I'll look exactly for someone like that then. I'd be like, keep out, you nosy bitch.
I think the stylistic choice there though does kind of work in the sense of like, having these kind of larger than life characters, oh, she's a woman who's like looking for love, and anything that she then sees as the hint of like, this is the man you have to be with, she's kind of chasing that. So they set that up from the beginning. They set up They set up the whole kind of like there's something with the mother and the son, and like that's what I'm saying. That, the whole thing with the father, and it's very rushed at the end. Like spoilers for the end of the movie. But then when he's very much bringing up this whole like, you killed that lady and my dad, I was like, whoa, you really are just throwing this in at the end. And I was,
it's a murder mystery now. It's a revenge tale.
Yeah, so I kind of appreciated that for the kind of character arc. But it was very like, I was like, oh, I wasn't even considering that there might have been a sinister motive to the father dying or the mother or anything like that. So it kind of made things make more sense. But I think that entire final act to me is kind of more the kind of made sense of the movie, in the sense of it's kind of skit like you were saying in terms of genre bending. But it is also just like, imagine if this happened. Imagine if there was this zombie. Imagine if somebody died in this way. Imagine if somebody's head was cut in half and they were still like sliding around the place. I think that final act to me was kind of like...
blood skating scene.
Yes!
I enjoyed that. I thought that was fun.
So much blood. So much blood.
That's the only thing that David warned me about. After I already explained probably about 50 minutes into the film, he just says, yeah, the last 30 minutes is literally just a bloodbath. Yeah. And I had to resist the urge to message back. It's like, you were not kidding.
But yeah. Going back to that, I think reason why I liked it more as I got older is because I didn't try to watch this as a cohesive movie. I know it's going to sound wrong because you guys have. I'm assuming it's the first time you guys have watched this.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
So this basically meant then this is you're watching as cohesive. If I watch it as segments, as scenes, but individually in their own structure, they all are funny and weird and quirky, out loud moments. Like it's something like League of Gentlemen level of weird.
I was thinking of League of Gentlemen actually. Which...
Cool. I also do not like that show.
Yes, exactly.
So it's that, like when with the zombies, let's say, especially like the zombies having dinner scene, that's very much something that they can come at from that left field, or having these weirdo characters just be extra weird and for the sake of it, or some of the hammy acting.
Wouldn't it be funny if this person was tortured? And again, it's down to that person whether they're like, is that funny? But that's the League of Gentlemen humor, is that is funny, isn't it?
It's also just the over elaborate acting. Like I love our Latina lover. I love her so very much. To the point, but her acting is purposely hamming over the top, saying lines like, but we're romantically entangled. What a line. It's
my
stuff
favorite
like that.
was dark forces are amassing against you.
Dark forces. It's so good. It's so purposely hammy. Like she feels like she's from a completely different movie, and it's true. Like she feels like so out of place until the last 20 minutes where she's actually helping them get rid of the bodies by shoving arms and legs down a blender. Before then she's like literally like, you're not from this movie. You're not really fit in this movie. You go away for now. And then she comes back and just becomes it's wonderful. It's every character almost feels like they come from their own universe, but they're all somehow shoved into this thing. And some people fit and some people don't, but eventually there is a place for them, despite them sometimes just being introduced once and then they're instantly killed off. Doesn't matter. They have a purpose.
Well, I think because you mentioned like the Archers, and we're talking about, again, maybe it is just me being kind of ignorant and thinking of like that part of the world. You think of like Neighbours and Home and Away, in terms of Australia. But some of the actors give me that vibe. Like the mother to me seemed like, oh, imagine if you saw like Vera from Coronation Street suddenly become like this weird zombie. That's what the vibe I was getting.
I don't want to think of that given what the mother looks like by the end of the film.
So I'm thinking like it is that kind of vibe of like, imagine these actors like playing these parts.
For reference, I've seen David's notes. He hasn't seen mine. We both have notes that talk about the physicality of what the mother looks like by the end. And Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Chris, what's your take on the story and the characters of this movie?
So yeah, I think you sort of touched on it then. Actually, this whole vibe of like that sort of almost like that old sort of family comedy style thing, situational sort of drama, and then you just throw zombies into it. And I think that's why it's so absurd. Is you've taken a sort of what could be a daytime television program about a son finding out about his mother murdering his father. But then if they said, oh yeah, but we're going to put zombies in it too. Or a love story between two people who are romantically entangled by fate, but there's zombies in it too. And it just becomes this whole, I love it because it's daft as all hell. Like I went into this thinking like, this is the thing. I thought it was going to be just a daft, violent movie. And it is violent as hell, but I think it's a great film. I think it's very funny. I think it's got great, like I mentioned before, great cinematography, great filmmaking. And although like it sometimes just feels like we are just moving from like sketch to sketch or scene to scene of doing wild and crazy stuff, there is a really funny through line going through it. And it's, the breakdown of his relationship with his family, and there is a love story there. And one thing that I love towards the end, and I only noticed it when I watched it again the other day, was at the end he throws the medallion away, and I think that's sort of a symbol like something. Yeah, it's no more fate, it's no more destiny. We decide this. And although it's very cheesy, I actually really appreciated that. Because by the end, up until that point, all the stuff her mother was predicting was coming true. He was surrounded by death, and there was horribleness around him. But they do end up falling in love with each other. It just happens to be, after an entirely massive ordeal of blood, violence, and being eaten by his mother's womb, that is my God, one of the most terrifying bits in the entire film is that just like, you'll always be loved by your mother, Lionel. It's
love comes from
God.
trauma. That we've learned from this. Love comes from horrible trauma. And maybe it's not beyond trauma. It's just sometimes you just gotta get sucked back into a womb to realize you don't need to be in there anymore.
Yeah,
it was a great, literal visual metaphor for that, because I think that is one thing I appreciated of the ending is, again, that kind of like you said, Chris, is that cheesiness of you've seen in other movies of like, I'm not scared of you anymore, that kind of standing up moment. I think that because of the performance and the music and the visuals, that did work really well for me. And I think the other moment in which that messaging becomes very clear is the funeral scene, in which like the Reverend is making a speech about like parents or like, motherhood and stuff, and you literally are then seeing him like rolling around with his like dead mother, and you're like, oh, okay, I now see what you're referencing. Because I think up until that point I was like a bit like Craig, I was like, why are you trying to hide the zombies? Why are you still like, it was like almost like a Mr. Bean-esque like reaction of being like, oh, well, I need to like keep sort of giving them this tranquilizer. I'm like, just burn them or something. Just tell people about it. Like, I thought it was going to be the zombies got released and then he just felt guilty about it and was trying to stop the breakout. But no, it becomes this weird situational comedy in which like, man has to like
and again,
hide zombies, but he didn't make them. He didn't create them.
And the thing is, I would have been completely on board with this if when she was alive I genuinely got that sense of everything that he did, he was worried about the perception of his mother. And I think there's only really one scene where that happens, and I didn't really get the vibe of, I didn't really get the psycho vibe of, oh, he's just so obsessed with his mother and vice versa. I think they needed to do more of just showing her being overbearing. That's why I was a bit like, wait, you are a mummy's boy? Since what? Yeah. Since when? You seem to get on a date perfectly fine. Like,
well, you say that, but he's awkward as balls.
Yeah.
And he was scared about like what she would do, like if you found him with a date. But yeah, I think they could have been clearer about like she had an issue with him going on a date and things like that. It just seemed like he was kind of a mummy's boy.
He also just seemed like when she was talking about like the is it WIWI? The WAWA, I can't remember.
Oh,
WLWL, sorry.
WLWL.
Yeah.
It just seemed like he was exasperated at that point. He acted in such a sort of like, okay, mum, that sort of like, I'm just dealing with you, but I'm still doing my own thing. It never actually seemed like the I'm exasperated, but I'm going along with this because this is what you want. So that's why I was a bit confused by that dynamic later on. I was just like,
yeah, they could have like opened the film with like the whole drowning thing as opposed to the monkey thing, I suppose. But yeah, Chris. Anyway, get back to what you were saying.
I think it's weird because like, there is that scene where Paquita finds all the bodies, and then he has a revelation of why he doesn't want to kill her because it's his mum. Because I think I think he does still love his mum, despite her being a massive pain in his ass. And obviously, the revelation of the bodies, it does come really. The revelation of the murders comes really late in the film, and that's what makes his transformation so wild. But also, I think he's got a really funny character arc, and I love the scene with the lawnmower. It's just him arriving and being like, "Party's over." I think it's such a great moment as well, because it's everyone would be like a chainsaw if it was any other film, but a lawnmower is perfect. I think as much as the story between him and his mum is very strange, it's done to add to the absurdity of the film, because it's an absurd movie, and I think it just makes the situation seem even more absurd. Like this, I don't think this film would have worked if these were just rando zombies. It had to be a family member. It had to be someone close to him. And obviously there's the whole thing of like, right off the bat, she kills the nurse. So that's one other thing to deal with. And then that's such a mad death as well. Just fingers through the face and then just snap her head off. And that infection spreads fast as well. Oh my gosh, you thought 28 days later was a fast infection spreading. This infection spreads really fast. So I think with Lionel, it's like his sort of journey is how much he loves and cares for his mother versus how he should really just let all this go before it goes too far. And unfortunately, his uncle turns up, and that's another mitigating factor, is that his uncle clearly, he doesn't care about any of this. He just wants the house and the money, and he puts Lionel in a hard place. And then of course he brings all the people round, which turns the whole situation into an even worse scenario. So it's a series of unfortunate events that are all hilarious and over the top and lead to just gore, violence, and brilliant comedy moments, and some weird comedy moments, like that one guy who he says to the punk, "Oh, I'm sorry, I call this person a pedophile," and then later in the film, he just, "Some of my best friends are pedophiles."
What a weird joke to land on.
That is a weird joke in the film.
So weird.
How did I miss those lines?
Oh my god! It's like there's two random references to pedophiles.
Yeah.
The vet is really strange as well, like again with like the drool and stuff.
The German vet.
Yeah, and that's what reminded me of League of Gentlemen. Let's talk about then, like I said, those bizarre, the practical effects, the visuals of this, because like we've all said, it really goes hell for leather at the end. And I think it does become just a showcase of, like, as you see with other films, well, now what if this happened? Now what if that happened? What if this happens? I think the standout one to me is the light bulb one.
That was great.
I loved that. I thought that looked so good. Like, 'cause some stuff you're like, that looks like, well, I think actually thinking about it, most stuff does look pretty good for what, maybe budget and the fact it's all done practically. It looks fantastic, most of it, especially like Craig said, the neck thing. The mother, just in terms of like the bulging and stuff, maybe, you're like, and the baby, when like the baby runs away, you're like, that's clearly a smaller person just in a costume. And like you said, Johann, with the like flapping around in the park.
I'd also say anything which involves anyone like having to move fast, I don't think looks quite as good. So the one torso when he's on the top of the blade having to spin around, I don't think looks quite that good. The baby, when it flies into the door and then gets smacked back, I think looks a bit cheap. But everything else I will defend on a practical level.
The bulb thing is just that warmth from it. It just looks incredible. Like, I'm like, you could get like a tattoo of that. It looks so good.
I would not get a tattoo of that. You're insane.
Not you, but somebody.
I would get that as a jack-o'-lantern, though. So put that on your front garden for Halloween. But I think
it's the way that they think about the kind of setup of everything, like when she moves and it's like the wires, then like when something else happens and like the wiring is affecting where she is and stuff like that.
I think another one of my favorites is the baby splitting the head open.
Well, yeah, that's like part of the like poster, I think, isn't it?
I think that's incredible. I think that's such a good, and as well because the girl's just passed away and it's very quiet, and then just the tearing of the head. I think that's an incredible effect,
and that's also a character beat, because that she's actually just like she's the nice one with the movie, and then when she dies, like, oh no, she's gonna turn. Oh no, she doesn't even get a chance to turn. The baby does it instead. What an asshole! Like you don't get like the, oh no, she's gonna turn. She never does. Which is a lie. She said, like, I'm not. She actually says, just be like a few minutes beforehand, says, no, I'm not going to turn. She never turns because the baby does it instead.
Yeah, Chekhov's victim.
Yes.
Even the guy with like the half head, like I thought that was like, this looks really effective and stuff. And when he goes into the blender and stuff, and there's some weird, like the intestines, like with the face thing. I was like, this is weird.
Stupid.
This is strange.
Wonderful.
The
Does
killer
it like fart at some point? It has like its arse.
Yeah, because at one point, because it's literally the rectum.
Yeah, I was like, wow.
The killer digestive system is one of the freakiest things ever, and just the fact that it makes farting noises.
That's what I do. I like the concept of like where zombies usually, okay, what is the limit to what will kill a zombie? Do you decapitate it? Do you burn it? Whatever. But I do like the idea of like this living organism of like literally it's like made everything alive. Like literally if like, a piece of skin was alive, like that is still able to turn itself into something. So I think it's very supernatural in that sense. It's gone beyond the monkey. It's gone beyond like just a bite from something. It's extraterrestrial, you know.
It's clever because like you've seen it with like Evil Dead, with the hand comes to life. So what other parts of the body could come to life? And he went, oh, it's got to be the guts. It's got to be all of the guts. And it's the fact that it does make the face. And then before he kills it, you can see it like on the floor going, praying at him like, don't kill me. It's such a good moment.
I mean, one of the interesting bits about how the zombies die in this is like, it's not just decapitate the head, because there's a whole sequence where there's a headless zombie, and so they put a garden gnome in it.
That was the bit that made me laugh, was just like the uncle's reaction to that, just seeing the like gnome on the head. I was like, wow, that's.
It turns out you have to dead space it. You have to they have to have no limbs of any kind in order to kill him off.
I can't believe how effective that uncle actually was with just dealing with the majority of the zombies.
Yeah, well, that like massacre moment in which again, that's like, yeah.
There's a really funny bit with him. There's a really funny bit with him and Lionel, when Lionel punches him and then he attacks Lionel, he literally rams him with his head. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. He just runs it and then he just like a cartoon character.
That was the only thing that was awkward about the situation. It was like, how do we get them back down into the basement? He rams him into the basement. Oh, like, and now like somebody else like rescues them from the basement. It was like constantly, how do you get back to the basement? But the uncle, yeah, he was very effective at being that kind of very like, you don't like him, but he's a very bold, brash character.
Just wish they didn't do so many dick punt moments with him though. After a while, I was just like, guys, you've got to focus on somewhere else.
I always like that Hollywood trope though of, what do you call it, Hollywood, but that film trope of like guy who wears wig and must have wig fall off and some kind of punishment for wearing a wig, or like the wig must like be shamed in some way. Like, you know, the wig is on, you know, an intestine or whatever.
But wonderful. One of the things you said actually, Chris, that got me into is like, he's a cartoon character. If you look at it like that and say, right, everyone here is a live action Looney Tune character, it just you allow even more the nonsense. If you think like, if you basically think of Lionel's sort of a he's a Bugs Bunny character by the end of it, you're like, okay, this makes sense. But now I want to imagine like a remake where all the characters are just replaced by Looney Tunes instead.
Oh gosh, I'd love to see that.
It would mean we would be seeing what is the name of like the grandmother character in Looney Tunes, because that's who we're going to essentially be seeing.
Granny,
yeah. We're just going to be seeing Granny like turn like naked zombie, sagging tits, huge ass out of nowhere.
10 out of 10. Porky Pig is also is definitely the priest. I kick ass for the Lord. That thing. You can imagine that 1,000%.
Taz would have a field day, you know, as the lawnmower, essentially, you know, at the end.
They just let him loose. It's like, go.
Do you have any standout sort of practical effect moments? Have we mentioned a lot of them? Or
my favorite one is obviously, my favorite one because it's so random, is the kung fu scene, but it's also the fact that this one priest literally knocks off every limb of this one modder guy, and it's amazing because he literally goes for the legs. And the thing is, something about these zombies that I did get is that they are literally made out of like goo. They are so soft. So, I mean, like any force, legs fall off, loses the legs, or like loses the arms and starts using them as nunchuck just to whack the other guy, flings the head up, flings it right up in the air. And then the irony of it all is that he gets bitten by the head he kicked off.
Yeah.
The irony of it all.
And that image with like the music when he's like on the statue and everything. I think what also you could tell from the zombies is the carnivorous aspect of like later on when it's just like, we're literally going to rip out your rib cage, or like that guy who has like his legs like all gone. And it's not just like the typical I'm half a person. It's the fact that you can still see half his body, but then you just see, you know, like bone legs and like boots, and you're like, whoa, that looks creepy and weird as hell. Because I guess there's a kind of like, almost you're like, yeah, I can imagine that happening to an extent, you know, in terms of like a really bad accident or something.
Yeah. You're right about that. It's like, they don't want to, well, they do want to like kill them, obviously, but they are looking to eat them first. but maybe they're almost like, oh, I've had a little bit, and then they run off to something else, leaving them to all come back to life in the party scene, which is why there's not a lot of like, just like pieces. There's no like pieces. They're not like, let's rip them up into shreds. They just want to nibble enough till they're happy about it. And then they all come back and they make friends. They make out and have sex right in the middle of the thing. For example, with the priest and the nurse, which I still don't get, but it is quality.
Okay, take those cassettes, rewind them, and play them again, because it's time for VHS Corner. So this week, because we thought, being on a couple of episodes with us with a lot of the gory details, a lot of the sort of weird horror, we thought this time we would ask Johann if he wanted to dive into this film deeper, to tell us some of the interesting tidbits. Had nothing to do with the fact I didn't want to touch this film, nothing to do with that whatsoever. So Johann, tell us a little bit about what you found.
All right, then. So let me just browse through my massive collection of VHSs to find exactly all the information you're going to need. So let's rewind that, shall we? So there's a couple of interesting things, first of all. Like this movie, as most people may or may not know, this has been labeled as one of the bloodiest films ever made. To the point that the final scene used 300 liters of fake blood. 300 liters of fake blood, and the lawnmower was shooting blood at about 5 gallons per second. So you can imagine by that point that, the entire movie, lots and lots of blood. The movie was originally going to be 4.5 million New Zealand dollary dues, but was sort of stripped back to be about only 3 million dollary dues. They used certain ways in order to save money. Like, for example, when most people were shooting 35mm, Peter Jackson decided to go on Super 16 so they can use all of the money for visual effects, which you can clearly see in that. To the point that they went under. He actually ended up having 45,000 New Zealand dollary dues at the end of it. And the scene they shot was the baby in the park scene. It was never intended to be in the movie. This was literally a last-minute moment. So they shot that in 2 days, and clearly, and he's gone off to say that it is his favorite scene he's ever done. Now, some of you smart people out there may have already noticed that Peter Jackson is a well-known aficionado of some of the classic movies. So the movie does officially start on Skull Island, which is officially the name of the island in King Kong, and so clearly this is, to some degree, this is canon. But the wonderful irony of that all is that it does end up being that he does end up making a King Kong movie in 2005. So it's gone full circle with that. Now, there are some unique titles, different alternative titles to Braindead. Obviously, there is Dead Alive from the United States, and the reason why is because there was already a movie out called Braindead in 1990 with a gap in the middle of it, and they didn't want to confuse anybody, so they said, okay, you're dead alive now. But in other countries, they have some more unique ones. Like, for example, the translation for the Hungarian title of the movie was basically its equivalency. I can't remember how to pronounce the word, but it's equivalency of cool, basically. The title of the Hungarian is called Cool, but the combination of that is good as dead. So in other words, then, the movie's just called Dead Good, right? But my favorite one is the Spanish title, which I will pronounce because yo hablas un poquito español, is Tu madre se ha comido a mi perro. In other words, the literal translation of Your mother ate my dog. So in Spain, they literally use that as the title. Now, one final little bit of note is we already talked about already that this is the bloodiest film ever made. But in terms of different kinds of versions of them, there were a few. Some countries didn't ban them, like in Canada, it was strict down to 90 minutes. America actually had quite a bit shaved off and so on. But the Brits The Brits, we loved it so much. The BBFC loved the film so much and found the gore so comical and inoffensive that they were seriously considering granting the movie a 15. But in the end, they decided to go for an 18 just for the sheer amount of it. In other words, they found the gore to not be gratuitous and nasty. They just found it so funny that they wanted more people to see it. But they couldn't justify the amount of blood. So that's why that movie was an 18 at that point. So yeah, that's a bit from that. One final little thing, as I was researching this, I just found this really, really funny. When this came out in 1992, it was a bit of a financial bomb in most places, except in New Zealand, where on its home turf, this movie earned more per screen than Batman Returns. And so, on that solid note, that is what I found on my trivia for Braindead.
Awesome. I love the first one in the sense of we're now in summer season in terms of like, the whole battle of Oppenheimer versus Barbie. And I don't know if you've seen recently that Barbie apparently caused a shortage of like pink paint or color because they used that much pink on the sets and everything. And like, so I'm like, is this the equivalent for red? Like they used that much blood, like gallons of blood. There's like Barbie's using up all the pink and Braindead's using up all the red and the blood.
300 litres for just the end scene on its own. Just the final scene was 300 litres. You can imagine the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
I was going to give this film credit. It was like, wow, with all those practical effects, you didn't spend all of it. That's amazing. And then you say the rest of the money went on that park scene. I'm like, oh, well, you lost the bit of respect you just gained in 10 seconds.
I was going to say, actually, that scene stood out to me in the sense you guys were talking about it being like a sketch or, like segments. And that to me was the weirdest in the sense it literally faded out, I think. Did it like fade out and then fade back in? I was like, oh, I'm not used to seeing this in like a film. Usually that's left for like television. So that makes it even more evident that, yeah, it wasn't planned to be in there. And it is just this really weird random moment that they put in there because it is like, why is he taking the baby like out in a stroller? And it's like, but okay, if Peter Jackson, if it's one of his favorite things he's ever done, sure, power to you.
I'm also impressive that when you were saying the Spanish title, because of the Spanish I did at school, I remembered enough of it that when you were saying that the title was like Tu Madre, I was like, why have you made the title Your Mother something? Oh, for God's sake.
I love how they go for like the literal thing where it's like your mother ate my dog. Personally, if you watch the hour title and going, God damn, what the hell, you would have to watch it out of just curiosity.
And then after a while, you just be like, okay, we're past the dog. Why am I still here?
You peaked at the 30-minute mark.
Oh, you could always go more than dog.
And they do, sadly.
The mother is obviously a big part of it, but it's not like she's not like the entire centerpiece of the film. Like emotionally,
well, she kind of is.
Well, okay,
she turned into a weird zombie rat thing.
Yeah, but again, it's not like she's not like the Godzilla. It's not like she's the one.
Again, like
she's not. She is. She does go kaiju at the end, but it's not. She's not the only creature. That's what I'm saying. So it's like it's not the mother is the monster. It's like a bunch of zombies. So that's the only thing I would say about that title. But I can understand when you're there like struggling for titles. Just take a part from the film. Just take a line from it. That always works.
Can I ask you guys a question about how you watched it? Did you watch this on DVD or did you watch it on streaming? Well, the reason I wanted to bring this up, but on the DVD version I've got, it starts with the New Zealand Film Board. And the way the New Zealand Film Board used to be at that time was it would show you the New Zealand flag and then it would play the God Save the Queen. And it would show footage of the Queen riding on the horse in front of Buckingham Palace. And I thought to myself, I bet she would love to be associated with this film.
She's on the IMDb credits.
Interesting factoid on
footage.
That. Yeah. Interesting factoid on that, because that was literally how it started off. That was original footage from that time. But throughout the movie, there's loads of references to the Queen. In fact, at one scene, Lionel actually turns a picture of the Queen around so it doesn't get covered in blood. So I think Peter Jackson at that point going, oh, why do we always have to start off with the Queen? Let's just poke fun of the fact that we have to start with the Queen.
I was thinking that during it, because where I watched it online, it didn't have the film board aspect, but I did think in my head, this seems like the type of thing you would do that because it's, funded in New Zealand and everything like that. So it seems that they would have funded by the New Zealand Film Board, which is funny because it's then such a oh my God, government money has been spent on this or whatever. But yeah, the fact is then the Queen and everything as well, that's even more hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, that leads us now then to the movie vault. So for anyone new, we'd like to think of this as a time capsule of memorable movies for someone to dig up in the future. So should Braindead or Dead Alive, depending on where you're situated, from 1992 gain the honor of a place in our movie vault and be remembered for all time? This is definitely going to be an interesting one, very much like what we've had in the past few months of controversial films. I'm going to go with Johann first, just possibly because he's like the biggest fan, I feel, maybe.
Okay, so to me, I do think if it was me, just me, I'm the only person ever, yes, of course, I'd go in the vault. But and reason why I would go in the vault because of the sheer fact that it is so gory, but in the way that is so comical that it reaches splatter comedy levels. Like, it's so ridiculously wonderful for that aspect, but I don't know whether or not everyone else is going to feel the same way. And so, if I was going to do it like everyone and their grandmother should watch this, I would say no. This is one of those movies where you've got to be like, it's like, so are you in a special mood? Come over here, have some wine, have some popcorn, and enjoy this mess. And I think because of the fact that what people only really remember from this movie, although I've watched it so many times that I know things inside out, it is quotable, but it is the weirdness, the bombasticness, but everything else people just forget or get annoyed at. So it isn't perfect. It's perfect for me because I like silly nonsense and I still think The Zombie Baby is the best thing ever made. But out of my own better judgment, despite me loving this film forever and ever, I don't know. I don't know whether it should go in the vault for the fact that I think it's only a crowd pleaser for a small niche bunch of people who are okay with seeing limbs being used as nunchucks. So I'm going to say no. No. I know, okay. Right? Completely controversial what I just said. But I'm saying no.
Interesting. Okay. Because, I was thinking, do I go at possibly the most love and the most hate straight after? But maybe
I love how you gestured your hands completely in the wrong direction there.
Well,
you gestured love towards me, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Chris, then, what do you think? This get another perspective here without a polar opposite.
Okay, so this film, it has basically become so famous for a multitude of reasons. The biggest one being that this is one of Peter Jackson's films, and everyone knows who Peter Jackson is because, let's be real, he may very well have directed the greatest trilogy cinema has ever seen. I mean, I wouldn't personally call myself a Lord of the Rings fan, but I can see that those films are arguably the three best set of films ever made. Not maybe mine, but the whole world seems to think that. And at a certain point, you've got to bend the knee to that opinion. But for me, this film is a fantastic example of why you should put faith in independent filmmakers and filmmakers who have crazy ideas and are passionate and also don't take themselves that seriously. I look at a film like this in the same way that I look at a film like The Evil Dead, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Terminator. Yes, they're films of a certain genre and they appeal to a certain fan base, but they are so out there and so engaging and so exciting. And what they ended up creating from that, whether that be sequels or an entire career for certain people, it's emblematic of why we need to have faith in young filmmakers and why we need to have faith in new people making cinema and new people doing something and taking these risks. We talked about it earlier. Peter Jackson may have been bitten by the Hollywood bug, and the problem with that is the side effect is sometimes stuff looks very generic and feels generic. So much to the point that the Hobbit trilogy just doesn't feel any different to what he did with Lord of the Rings. And maybe that's more an indictment on Hollywood, but to me, I think it shows the ideas of when you give someone the passion, the freedom to try and be creative, to take these wild risks and do these things. Sure, it might be a niche film, but it's a bloody good one. And it's so good, and it still lives on to this day, and people still talk about this and they still reference it. And it, to me, for that alone, it goes in the vault, because we need more people, more arts councils and more people to put faith in people like Peter Jackson, because you never know. The guy that makes a film about his mum trying to eat him with her own womb could go on to make the 3 greatest films ever made. You're damn right this film's going in the vault.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I've ever heard such an impassioned speech on well good movies. You did miss the opportunity, though, Chris, to say he's bitten by the Hollywood bug. He was bitten by the Hollywood Sumatran rat monkey, maybe.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Yeah, it is impassioned, definitely. Okay, Craig.
You can't do that.
This is what you do for a living.
I'll go step outside for a minute.
Right. Let's look at the ways in which we could categorize this film into the vault. I don't think we can necessarily say this is the greatest Peter Jackson film because it's up against Lord of the fucking Rings. Right? That's just not happening. So it's not going to go in on those grounds. Is it going to go in grounds of like one of the greatest horror films ever? No, because not only are there just like more striking horror that just gets people down to the core, but also insofar as comedy horror, I think there are probably more influential. So it's not going to go in on like those grounds. Technical wise, I think this is where we have to have the discussion. Cinematography, I agree with what was said earlier. Chris said it. I said there were some great cinematography moments, even though that the technicality of it was limited. I agree. There's some great shots there, but again, I think unfortunately, because other makers have had, more expertise, more technical access and money, basically, they have made better striking. And so nobody looks at this film and thinks about it in cinematography basis. So it's just down to practical effects, which I think is definitely where the film is at its strongest. And the leaning for where I could advocate for it necessarily going in, because I think some of the practical effects of this film are fantastic. Do I advocate for it to go in on those grounds? No, because there is a degree to which I think in order for a lot of the practical effects to have the strongest element for me in the film, it needs to be able to utilize the other aspects of the film in order to be able to draw me in. I've already established that a lot of the comedy I wasn't able to get on board with because I didn't get a right sense of the world. I think you have to understand the way in which it's going to go for the genre jumping, otherwise it just looks like it's going for random effects necessarily. I was not able to get on board with this. There are elements of this film that just genuinely did lose me. To that point, I don't think it is a well-constructed film, and I think that it honestly would have been better as like a TV series, essentially, if it's going to go for like sort of episodic genre feels different from different moments, at which point I don't think it works well as a film, which means I don't think it should go in the vault. So that's me saying I think there are good elements of this film, not, completely pissing on everyone's dreams like that guy pissed on his mother's grave, or the mother's grave even. I just don't think it's a good film.
Which, by the way, is probably a better dick joke than the uncle stuff when...
Yeah, I agree. You could see where it was going, but like...
Random factoid on that one, by the way. The uncle gets hit in the nuts 5 times.
Okay, yeah, I think, this has been a great discussion, as I said, and I think that it's great when we have these, like, different approaches and opinions about a film like this without it just being like, yeah, it's definitely awful, it definitely goes in. Here's where I'm thinking, and it does come down to a lot of what we've said in the past. I think that a lot of the time, I think the Johann brings up a great point is one would you recommend somebody to watch this film? Part of the vault is being like, a vault of films for people to go watch. And yes, okay, not every film might be somebody's cup of tea, but I think the fact of like, would you recommend this to somebody? And I think the fact that a fan of the film or, somebody like myself who can still watch something and be like, it wasn't for me, but I could still say it was a fun time. I don't know who I would sort of like recommend this to, who hasn't already seen it, who isn't already a fan, who isn't already in that world. I think that is a big part for me. And I think what Chris was saying, I think that is really important about young filmmakers, independent cinema, making something bold and crazy, definitely. Because I think, what Craig said about like, there's films that are more striking in terms of their budgets and stuff. You don't want to be unfair and just say, oh, well, they automatically go in because they have a big budget. I'm all for like, low budget stuff. But we have got things like Anna and the Apocalypse, which has gone in the vault, which I, was not as big a fan of that film either. You
always bring it back to...
But I'm just saying I'm being fair.
Okay.
So I think the fact that, we have hopefully got, not to say that there's one film that represents like low budget cinema, but I think, we have advocated for that before. And I think it's more difficult to say that films like this are important when we have brought up filmmakers like Sam Raimi, Taika Waititi, who are also doing bold and crazy different things. I'm not sure if we could say something like Into the Spider-Verse, which has recently come out, if that didn't go in, you're, saying that like what? Like being experimental and big and bold with animation is not an important thing? Of course it is. So I think that when you do things which are important to the industry, when you're going against the grain, like a film like that does, that is really important to highlight. Here, I think that there is still enough comedy, horror, gory, bloody stuff out there. Yes, it might have the most blood ever and holds that record, but I think the fact we have also mentioned Meet the Feebles, so the fact that you got something like Bad Taste as well, which is also champion that kind of practical effects, crazy, zany ideas, I think that I'm not sure if this stands out to me as like this is the Peter Jackson zany independent horror film, because it's a collection of films almost in a way. And I think that, yes, this has got a legacy to an extent, but I just don't think it's maybe strong enough on the legacy, but also I don't think it's strong enough in the kind of like, it's an independent, crazy, small budget film. I think that ultimately it still goes down to like what I often refer to as like the Avatar effect of, yes, that film is very important, 3D and, like CG or everything that did for cinema, but we didn't put it in because at the end of the day, we still said the story didn't stand up. And I think it kind of is the same here, even though, yes, I agree with you guys, you kind of just go in and it's a crazy fun time. You don't want to kind of analyze it critically. I think that it is still important when you look at that vault of movies to have a bunch of films, unless it's something like a Monty Python in which it very much is clear this is a sketch movie. I think that you still kind of have to have that cohesive story or all of those emotional beats very clear. So I think, unfortunately, it's a no on the movie vault. Sorry, Chris. As much as, I want to give you like a BAFTA for that speech, though. It was the most
honestly,
impassioned.
Chris, you nearly made me change my mind. I picked it. I picked no because I just think like this movie feels very me, but to the point that I know that no one else would think the same thing. But God damn it, you made me feel so wonderfully patriotic for this movie.
I'll say this much. I do agree with, as much as I would have loved to have seen this movie go in the vault. Your point about Avatar, I agree with that sense, because maybe sometimes we do have to look at a film and be like, what surrounds it isn't what defines it as being a great film. So I can understand where you're coming from, but I'll just say this: I would rather watch this film twice than ever watch Avatar once.
Agreed. Yeah. Well, Avatar 2, that's recently been on Disney Plus. I was like, do I want to watch this? I was like, I might watch a scene just to see what the 4K looks like on my TV, but I never need to watch that film again. It's just the same film again.
We're in the endgame now.
It's so annoying.
Okay, endgame time. What I will say is that, Chris, your impassioned speech is not a complete loss, because I recognize the emotion that went into it. To that, I am changing the name of this game to be more accommodating to your views on this film. Okay, endgame time. So today's game is simply called What an Odd Thing to Say. Originally, that was bad. Basically, a lot of horror films are known for, their atmosphere, their practical effects, their characters, etc. One thing that obviously does happen every now and then with regards to horror films are particular lines. Certain lines become infamous to people, whether they be the sorts of things that, say, become ingrained with the culture of the film, such as like The Sixth Sense and I See Dead People, or The Exorcist, the Power of Christ Compels You. You do have to acknowledge, though, that some have bad reputation with regards to some of the lines because they are either very odd things to say in the first place or have been delivered in very, very bad ways. So what I've done is I've got a list of 10 quotes, and basically this is fastest first. I want you to guess what is the film that the quote comes from. Simple as. Okay? But before that, we need to know exactly what it is we'll be playing for the next episode. So as always, everyone here has a film choice they would like to put forward, and we're just going to hear a little bit about them. In a surprise twist, I'm not going to reveal anything, but David and I actually know what our choices are for once. But obviously, we have no say in which one gets chosen. It is up to the winner of the endgame. So, David, tease us with what you'd like to put forward.
So my film is from 2013, and I've got sort of two links to why I'm bringing this up. One is partly because of Johann. In the last episode he was on, he brought up Quentin Tarantino and why we came to Battle Royale in terms of saying that it was like one of his favorite films ever. So this is another film which he has highlighted in the past, in which he said the first 45 minutes are excellent. Then comes the end scene, incredible. When I saw it, I kept thinking, what's the film that everyone says is crap? Seriously? So there's that connection. But also, we've talked about the fact that this film has a lot of like troublesome content, a lot of like crazy antics, people eating each other, etc. A lot of like people, like the zombies are addicted to blood. And what, better like continuation of that can you have than a film that actually has somebody who has partaked in the flesh as a cannibal? That is my recommendation for this episode.
Oh, I can't believe you actually went that blatant with the reference. So we have that. So we have David's 2013 Touch with Cannibalism film. Chris, tell us a little bit about the film you'd like to suggest.
Well, this may be a theme, but my film is an ultra-violent film that also involves cannibalism. It's from 1993. It was also, similarly to this film, made by filmmaker or filmmakers or content creators who have gone on to produce television and movies and, dare I say it, Broadway musicals. And speaking of musicals, this film is also a musical and based on a true story.
Okay, I think I might know what that is. Okay, wonderful. Johann, tell us a little bit about your film.
Okay, so what I picked up from doing Braindead and why I love that, it is the ultimate horror comedy. At least in terms of it is so over-the-toply comical that the horror no longer really becomes scary anymore. It's all about gore and bits. So I decided to pick a film that mostly is about that. So I picked a movie that came out in the same year, 1992. It is from a master of horror comedy, and the fact that it's part of a franchise that you guys haven't talked about surprises me. So that's all I'm saying.
Okay. And another interesting take there. And shut up.
Such a different vibe.
Well, because you know what mine's called.
Yes, yeah.
So my film from 1997 is not from the horror genre. It has a couple of different links going forward. One is obviously one element from Braindead that I highlighted was the random use of an Archers episode, which got me thinking about the Midlands of England, but then got me thinking slightly further north, which is where my film is based. The other thing is, given that the film that we just discussed was has the name Dead Alive, this is a film which very much, insofar as franchise aspects, was very much dead, but now very recently, because of other projects coming out or have come out by the time this episode has, is very much alive. So it's gone from dead to alive. So we have 4 completely different films, and by that I mean my film and everyone else's that has a tinge of darkness to them. But which film will be chosen? We won't know until the end of the endgame. So, remember, if you win, you can choose your own, you can choose each other's, or you could choose one of mine or David's. So, are we ready to play What an Odd Thing to Say?
Yes.
Okay. We'll start with one of the easier quotes of this game. Are you ready? Quote number 1. Garbage day!
Chris.
Ding, 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 ding.
That was Chris.
It is Silent Night, Deadly Night 2.
Is it correct? It is indeed correct. I will accept it, even though you missed out the word part.
Oh,
But
excuse
effectively,
me.
yes. It is Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Quote number 2. When he's near, toast falls jelly side down, children hit tables, and people get hurt.
Ooh. Can you say it again, please?
When he's near, toast falls jelly side down, children hit tables, and people get hurt. I won't do an accent for this one because this is a Hispanic old lady. I would not do this quote any justice.
Why does not ring a bell to me? I
I
don't think I know.
I will give you a hint. I will tell you the director.
Okay.
That might give you an idea. This is an M. Night Shyamalan film.
Goodness. Ding, 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 ding.
Johann?
Is it from the movie Split?
Is it from Split? No, it isn't.
Okay.
So, Chris, do you have any ideas for the point?
Toast falls jelly side down, children hit tables. What was the
People
last
get
part?
hurt. People get hurt.
I'm just going to throw it out there. Sixth Sense.
Is it Sixth Sense? Unfortunately not. It's Devil.
It's that movie.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so shit.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah. I could not have stressed it more. These are from bad horror films.
Yeah.
I know, but wow, that's bad. Okay, all right, I'm ready. Bloody hell! All right, okay. Now, okay, we're in the end game now. Okay, let's
Yeah,
do this.
we have been for the last 10 minutes, I thought. But okay, quote number 3. Are we ready? Mm-hmm. I am the Wizard Master.
Chris. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors.
Yep, that's spot on. Another point.
You got me there. Oh, that was a good hint. I was about to say that. Oh man.
Yeah.
watched
Ironically,
it
Part
recently.
wasn't in that title, but I'll accept it still.
So good.
Okay, number 4. You've got perfect nipple placement, baby.
Ding, 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 ding.
Johann?
It's Jason X, isn't it?
It's not Jason X.
Oh.
What?
It's like if you didn't think it was, if we didn't know it was horror comedy, you'd want to say like Dumb and Dumber. Or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. You've got perfect nipple placement, baby. Do you know, I haven't a clue. I don't know. Sorry.
Okay, so you're passing?
Yeah, pass.
Okay. Johann, you seem to have a reaction. Have you worked out what it is?
Okay, I'm thinking, if it's what I think it is, you've got perfect nipple placement. I'm thinking whether that's the case or whether it's the fact that it's not technically a horror in my mind, but it could have been something with, it could have, I instantly thought of Total Recall with the free booby lady.
Okay, it's not total. It's Friday the 13th.
I thought Johan was like, I try to think of a film that does have perfect nipple placement.
Wait.
That did have free nipple perfect
Wait,
placement.
Friday the 13th Part 1?
Apparently so, according to this list.
God, I've never heard that line in that film. Shit the bed, I know who says it now.
What I will say is, if you guys don't get the next quote, it's not on me or Screen Rant. It is very much on you guys. This is
Sure.
very much going to be fastest first. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Quote number 5. How to get burned? How to get burned? That was Johann.
That is the Wicker Man remake.
Yep, give him Wicker Man.
How many
God damn
times has
it.
this film come up in Endgames recently?
It's a source of gold.
It is, yeah.
It literally has him dressed in a bear punching a little girl. How I've
man,
never
that's
used that for an
funny.
endgame yet.
10 out of 10.
How to get burned.
Okay, quote number 6. It makes you kill yourself.
Oh, this...
Ding, 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 ding.
Johann,
The Happening?
he's got it.
It did sound familiar, yeah. I was like, where do I know this?
The Wind. The evil thing is the wind.
Is this also M. Night Shyamalan? Well,
It's also an M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong movie.
M. Night. What are you doing making all these bad horror movies?
You have Night in
Shyamalan
your
Ding Dong.
name. How are you making such bad, dark movies? Number 7. If she were any quieter, she'd be dead.
Chris.
Chris?
Sleepaway Camp.
Is it Sleepaway Camp? Yes, it is.
Yes!
Oh, now I know. God damn it.
That is a terrible film. That is honest to God, I watched that because that film gets talked about by everyone all the time. Oh, it's one of those shocking camp horror. It is bollocks. It is such a naff film. And I can't believe
very naff.
Like,
yeah, it's naff, and the only reason why people talk about it is because of the ending. That's quite literally the only reason why people talk about it. Yeah. And even now, the ending is aged like sour milk.
Yeah,
I just like how we had such the impassioned defense earlier from Chris, and now it's just like it's bollocks.
Yeah, this is the impassioned hate.
There are people that will rate that film higher than Braindead, and I want to punch them
so hard.
Well, I hope never to watch that film.
Avoid it.
Let me just change my answer.
Yes.
Okay, are we ready for number 8?
Go on.
Do your thing, cuz.
Chris. Another terrible film. It's Texas Chainsaw 3D.
Yeah, it is.
That, my God. Oh, that film made me so mad.
I knew that line came from one of the Texas Chainsaws. I didn't think it was 3D though. But that's all bad.
Yeah.
I actually thought that might have come out from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I thought that was one I was going to ask, but
that would have been the nail biter. But what else is nail biting is the scores. David, how are we standing?
It's 4 to Chris, 2 to Johann.
With 2 questions left, we could be looking at a tiebreak.
Okay.
Number 9. If Pazuzu comes for you,
Chris.
I will spit a leopard. Are you going for The Exorcist?
Exorcist. Oh, no. Oh, it's Exorcist Part 3?
You're going for Part 3?
Yeah.
You're wrong.
Oh.
Ding, 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 ding.
Johann?
Is it The Exorcist 2, The Heretic?
You are correct. Yes! This is the tension we live for on this show.
It's 2, baby! It's so naff!
It was the Pazuzu line. I just immediately went for Exorcist. I didn't know.
And the thing is, you didn't even let me finish the quote. It was, I will spit a leopard.
Yeah.
The final quote of the game.
God, this is getting hot and steamy in here.
Yeah. It's not just the weather.
Looking a little crispy over there, Mikey.
Oh, God.
I love the reactions of both guests are just vitally different. Chris is in silent contemplation. Johann's darting around the room like, oh God, what is it?
How do I get out of here?
Mikey.
It could be Mickey, but it's spelt Mikey.
Ding, ding, ding. Is it Halloween Resurrection?
He's only gone and done it. It's the tiebreak. Oh, of course I didn't plan for this.
Oh my God, that hurt me.
That's the one Halloween film I haven't seen.
So the scores at the end of that round
Is 4-all.
Oh my God, this hurts me. Okay, come on.
Because you technically have both won this end game, we're not going to go for a bad film. We are going to go for a good film horror quote.
Okay.
So this will be the fastest first. So your quote is... You'll float too.
Chris!
That is Chris.
It. Or It Chapter 1. Because it's in both of them.
Give it to Chris. He's won the end game.
Oh, a nail-biting game.
So David, the
Final score
Well
is
done,
5
Johann.
to Chris, 4 to
Congratulations.
Johann.
Well played.
If you're talking horror comedies, we had
Well played.
the best contestants.
Well
there.
played. Well played. Well played.
Well done.
how do you feel, Chris?
That was some stiff competition, Johann. Fair play, man. Fair play.
Well done. Well done,
That was
both.
tough.
So of course, Chris, you now get the opportunity to choose. Would you like to choose your film, Johann film, or either mine or David's.
The funny thing is like I was going to go for mine originally, but then Craig, yours genuinely intrigued me.
Yep.
And just to break the trend, I'm going to go with Craig's. I'm going to go with Craig's.
So what's the intrigue that gets people?
So with my film, obviously I got reminded of the Midlands of England, and this is true, and my film... so I even tried to look up exactly where The Archers is based. Obviously, it's based in a fictitious little town, Ambridge, which is around sort of Warwickshire way. So I decided to look what is near Warwickshire, or at least insofar as counties. And that's when I came across Sheffield. And that's what got me thinking about everything that I've seen recently. So I've been to Sheffield recently, and they're very, very, proud of a certain film that's based from there from the past, from 1997. Also is getting a Disney Plus series that is currently out now. 25 years later, the lives of the working class men who lost their jobs, who needed to resort to becoming strippers. Yes, we are looking at the Full Monty!
We're finished, Dave. Extincto. Yesterday's news.
Shut it. Some of us are trying to get a job. Hey, and it says no smoking.
You forget, Gerald, you're not our foreman anymore. You're just like the rest of us. Scrap.
If you were out of work...
Get a job. If you want joint custody, then you have to pay your share.
And out of luck...
Now what? Shut up, I'm thinking.
You'd do anything...
You call them Chippendales, man?
...to turn your life around.
How many lasses were there, though? Thousands. It's worth a thought, though, isn't it?
But these men...
I don't see why not, Gerald. Because you're fat and he's thin, and you're both ugly.
...have come up with a plan...
No, not doing it. Come on, Dave, don't stop now.
...that's going to get them a lot of exposure.
A laughing stock. Totally.
We can either forget it or do it and just maybe get rich.
This is crazy.
They may not have the talent for it.
Dancers have coordination, fitness and grace.
The bodies for it.
The less I eat, the fatter I get. So stuff yourself and get thin.
Or the stomach for it.
I think I'm gonna be sick.
But when you've got nothing to lose...
This lot go all the way.
You lot.
You've got nothing to hide.
That would be worth a look.
We've sold 200 tickets.
No one said anything to me about the Full Monty.
Are you in or are you out?
Wow. That was a clever hook, man. Oh.
So the Full Monty, you can catch it, as Craig alluded to slightly, on Disney Plus as part of your subscription, along with the TV show if you want to watch it. You can also rent it on places like Apple TV, Rakuten, Amazon, and I'm sure you can pick it up on physical media on the likes of DVD. Is the Full Monty got a Blu-ray release? I don't know. Let us know. Whether you want to see the high definition of that film is also questionable.
It's somebody's kink, let's be fair.
So yeah, the Full Monty, quite the difference we're going to be getting there from Braindead, another drastic snap. Thank you guys for joining us. It's been a crazy, fun discussion as expected. Always a joy having you both on, especially talking about such kind of cult horror, crazy cinema. Johann, where can people catch you? What have you got coming up at this time of year, which will be in July?
Well, what we have at the moment is if you go onto YouTube and go to Enigmatic Retro Rewind, you usually find me and Ed talking about something fun and nostalgic. We've already having plans for upcoming events at the moment. We want to do an outdoor screening of a couple of occult films where, getting that all ready to go. And we just want to make more and more content. We're going to go back into some of our nostalgic video game stuff. We're going to do stuff with the Quad and Derby. We've got a lot happening around that time. So if you wanted to find out more, go into Enigmatic Retro Rewind. You can on YouTube. You can find us on socials like Instagram. You can find, if you type in Enigmatic, you find us there on that, on Twitter, on Facebook. You can find us all on there using that title. And you can find me on most places, like in Instagram. You can find me at Johann_Cult Film Club, or you can just find me at other social medias like that. I am not on Twitter because of the scary Musk, but everything else is all good. Otherwise, you can just find me from there.
And Chris, what about yourself? Where can people find you? What have you got coming up?
This year is going to be a very exciting year as Dramatic Moose is coming back with another play. Only this time I'll be on the opposite side. I won't be acting, I'll be directing my first production. That will be coming up in October this year in Cardiff. We'll be performing in the Little Man Coffee Company cafe in the centre of town. And the play is called The Universe PLC. And that's with Dramatic Moose. You can find Dramatic Moose on Facebook at Facebook.com/Dramatic Moose. You can find us on Twitter, twitter.com, dramatic_moose. You can find us on YouTube. If you type in Dramatic Moose Productions, you'll find our YouTube channel, which has a few of our productions and our audio projects. And as well as directing my first play this year, I've also had a script which will be made into a short film, which is due hopefully for release next year. This is a script I wrote quite a while ago, and due to the pandemic, it's been way in development hell. So now it's going to be getting made this year, and I'll be making that along with the Watchers Productions and their Strange Tales project. You can find the Watchers on Facebook at facebook.com/Watchers Productions. You can find them on Twitter at twitter.com/Watchers Film. And you can also find them on TikTok, tiktok.com/@Watchers_clips. And you can also find Strange Tales on YouTube if you type in Watchers Productions Strange Tales, or if you go to their website, watchersproductions.com, you'll find a hyperlink with all of the short films that we have made, one starring myself and one produced by myself that also starred Gareth David Lloyd of Torchwood fame. Just thought I'd put that
amazing.
one in there.
I met him in Curry's.
Oh, wow. Yes. Yeah, it's going to be quite a fun year this year. And it's interesting to be on the other side, not as an actor, but as a content creator, writer and director. So lots of stuff to look forward to.
We love to see it. Don't get bit by the monkey rat of Hollywood when you go into the directing game and start making the Hobbit films.
Hey, listen, if that monkey rat's going to pay me $1 billion, he can bite me wherever he wants.
Lots to go check out, guys. Please do go find it all. It sounds like really exciting stuff. And like Craig was saying earlier, like some people, like ignore him on here sometimes, and he's calling them out. Well, I'm loving it when people are giving us links and giving us stuff to go and find and share. Shame to you people who are like, no, I'm nowhere. I'm like, yes, somewhere. You can find them. So thank you guys. Not in a creepy way. So thank you guys. It has been so fun. We've had a very exciting episode. Loads of crazy conversations, a lot of impassioned speeches, and a very tense, nail-biting endgame, which led us to the Full Monty, which again, crazy take and random direction we've gone in once again. Craig, anything lastly from yourself, apart from happiness to be getting away from horror once again?
Hope everyone's enjoying the height of the Donna Summers. Get ready for some hot stuff, baby, this evening.
Amazing. All right, guys. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ooh, adios.
Hot stuff.
To keep up with the latest episodes of Well Good Movies, you can listen to us on all your usual podcast outlets, including Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and more. Don't forget to follow us, subscribe, and rate us where you can to keep our podcast growing. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Well Good Movies to keep up with the latest news and highlights from all our episodes, as well as tell us what movies you want to be discussed in the future. So what are you waiting for? Go check out the film we'll be discussing in next time's episode.
Is that the one with the girl and the donkey?